Hello and welcome to The Print. Today I am in conversation with Ms. Bhawana Somaaya, who has been a film critic for over 4 decades and, as she puts it in her book, has written for a galaxy of Indian publications. She is the former editor of Screen and currently she is the entertainment editor at 92.7 Big FM. And Ms. Bhawana Somaaya has authored over 19 books, which include biographies on Hema Malini and Amitabh Bachchan, and for her contributions to cinema and film writing, she has received a Padma Shri in 2017, among other accolades. So, welcome to The Print, ma'am. And today we are going to be talking about Miss Somaaya's lovely new book I have with me right here. It's called Farewell Karachi, a Partition Memoir, which is a deeply personal account of a Gujarati family's displacement during the partition and them finding roots in an entirely new country. So, and we're not just talking about one generation of a family, we're talking about 5 generations spanning across 100 years. So it's going to be a very interesting discussion. This is a Bloomsbury publication. And ma'am, I hope we have a great, fruitful discussion about it. Welcome to The Print once again.
And I want to say that you are absolutely marvelous because I have interacted with many people, and it's in the manner one does the introduction, one puts the points together, that you assess the person and you know how the conversation is going to flow.
Thank you. Thank you so much, ma'am. And my first question to you is, the most interesting aspect about your book that I found was how it sheds light on a very lesser known chapter of partition history, which is the experience of the Gujarati Lohana community in Karachi. And as someone who has roots in Punjab, who has grown up listening to stories of partition from my own family, I thought for a very long time that the partition experience was limited to Punjab. And it was only until I reached high school and college that I realized that it extended to Sindhis and it extended to Bengalis as well. So I want to know from you why, the unique aspects of the Lohana community's migration from Karachi, A, and B, why you think this community's story was so marginalized and invisibilized in the larger partition discourse, if you could tell us that.
That's a very interesting question because people get very surprised that even Gujaratis were affected.
Yeah.
And one of the questions I'm always asked is when I say my parents are from Karachi, they say, but what were the Gujaratis doing in Karachi? Yeah. So it's how little we know about our history. And also how history is built on perceptions. And we grow up with selective information and somehow never put the jigsaw puzzle together. And it needs a voice from the marginalized community or the group to come and tell their stories. And that is how voices are heard. When I started writing this book, a lot of my friends said that would people be interested? A celebrity friend of mine said that when she read Star's book, she's not interested in his forefathers. She just comes to the chapters where he talks about himself. Then why would be people interested in your great grandfather when I'm not even a celebrity? Yeah. So I thought about it, and I said that, see, if I'm going to get blocked and stumbled by these kind of logic, then I or anybody else will never be able to tell us stories. Yeah. I believe that any story that is interestingly told will have an audience. Yeah. I am not looking to become a bestseller author. I am looking at the book as a tribute to my parents and as a tribute to the family, to the community. And since I'm the writer of the family and I have documented so many actors and their biographies, I think it's time now to put the spotlight on my family and story. So I wanted to tell the story. I remember Fawad Khan when he was here. And I told him that, my family is from Karachi and they keep talking about the Karachi air, the Karachi roads, everything about Karachi. And Karachi for me is a sibling I never saw. Yeah. Because it's always invisible there in my life, in conversations on the dining table. And Fawad said that, I'm inundated with these stories when I'm coming here. There are so many stories and so much love for Lahore, Karachi, not so much Islamabad, I think. And I feel at least I had the courage to put the community together, and I can see the ripples because my family is very excited about the book, and my community is very excited. I have not yet kind of made my gateways to them and said that how and what we can do with the book. But there is a stir and there is a curiosity. People are talking about this Gujarati girl who has done this book. So let's see.
Yeah, that's very interesting to know. And coming to your family, there's one very interesting chapter about your joint family system, about the chimney house, the house of your grandfather, Mulji Bhai, if I'm not wrong. And it was your Ba's marital home. It was the heart of a close knit, traditional Gujarati family. So, if you could tell prospective readers what caused the big joint family structure to break down into smaller nests, as you put it, and how your family coped with that transition.
So obviously, I was not born at that time
Yeah.
when my mother got married. And it's not like my mother or my father were making us sit down and tell a story. So from childhood, these fragmented flashbacks were coming up at any time when my sister and we were perhaps misbehaving or asking for more that we can afford, and always about space. They were telling us little stories. Some stories were coming from the older siblings, because when you have 7 older siblings of different age groups, they all have different experiences. So my mother says that my mother came from a very affluent family,
Yes.
and she lived in a mansion like a bungalow, like a Raj Mahal, and they had very top line cars and everything. And she was married in a very well to do home, but not as well to do as her father. And she was very fragile and very delicate. And because she married at the age of 16 and became a mother at the age of 18, she said we had definite responsibilities as the daughters in law of the house. And though the sisters in law, co sisters, helped each other, eventually you had to accomplish your task.
Yeah.
And she said we all looked forward to that afternoon siesta because you could go to your room and rest. And I don't think there were any clocks in their rooms or anything. So that chimney house
Yeah.
that they lived in, and which was recognized as a chimney house. So there was a kind of some siren that went on. They could never see a factory or something, which was a wake up call to the women of the house to get up, change the sari, and come back to the kitchen and to their household chores. I found all these details very interesting, but I remember when my draft was ready and I gave it to my engineer nephew to read it. And he said, Bhavana, see, everything is nice, but I don't want to be involved in the domestic duties of the women, you know. So it's a matter of an opinion, and I respect it.
Yeah.
And my mother says it was the first, perhaps, the nuclear family that happened.
Yes.
And I'm very surprised that my grandfather did it, because in the book he says, "Ena anjuda, ena manjuda," that those who eat together stay together, then why would he do it? But when the women, my oldest aunt and my mother, were the one who were having children rapidly, frequently every year, the house could not accommodate and the women could not cope with so much responsibilities. So my mother says that she and her co-sister were very nervous and anxious about running their own homes, but also very excited to just be with their immediate family and how to do it. And you are right, the first crisis came when my father had typhoid.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, it was very tough. But
Yeah.
because she came from a very affluent family and her father had all the services available, whether it was car, house help, it was all there for her to recover from the crisis. And also, another crisis that she went through was her miscarriage. The
Hmm.
night she went
Yeah.
through that, that breaks my heart. There are two, three things in the book which each time, after you write your book, you sculpt it and you edit it.
Yeah.
Every time I cried because I felt that the women of that time had so much of sustenance,
Hmm.
and they had so much of bearing power, not just physical but the emotional strength, and there was so much caring for their spouse and companion and respect for the work he did, that you are not burdening him with your suffering till he has had a proper rest, because how can he cope with so much, two jobs, and then to again take you to the hospital and go through this. I just feel what an extraordinary woman,
Yeah.
because today
Hmm.
I don't know of anybody. The mobile phones have changed the culture and are breaking families, because a friend of mine who lives in a joint family says that when his wife had a problem with a mother in law, he didn't come to know about it till he went home at night. And
Yeah.
that also till the food was served to the entire family at the dining table. So it was
Hmm.
only when they were alone in the bedroom at 10 p.m. that he got to know what happened and why she's upset. Today
Yeah.
he says his son has a problem, and the next second his wife calls the son tells the problem to the father, and he says the entire mood at the office is destroyed.
Yeah.
We need to reflect on the technology.
If we could also narrow down on your mother's experiences in the chimney house, you very vividly described, you've described the architectural aspect of things also in each chapter, and one scene in the chimney house where there's a washing area, concrete washing area, and your mother had the responsibility of washing all the clothes herself with little to no help from the other sisters-in-law. So does she look back at those years with a sense of fondness, or did she have a quiet resentment for these patriarchal expectations that were placed on her? Was it
You'll be
better for her in a nuclear setup, or
You'll be surprised there was no resentment at all. I never sensed any bitterness. And even after they were separated and when they came to Mumbai or
yeah,
Bombay, and when my aunt came, they were like bonded sisters. And the way they spoke about their husbands or the brothers, or the way
yeah,
they spoke about that house and their memories, and they both were now belonging to different economic stratas.
yeah,
But it didn't matter. That was not a point of judgment at all. My mother
hmm,
said that I was not able to cope, but I did what I could. And she said my hands ached, and I would just tell your father that my hands ache, and he would say that you wash other people's clothes, don't do my clothes. When I go to the bathroom, give it to me quietly, and I'll wash my own clothes.
wow,
So
that's so
I thought that
incredibly
was so
progressive.
romantic. Yeah, so romantic.
Yeah. All right. So, one chapter in the book, it mentions your family's big move to Bhuj post partition and how your siblings struggled to cope with the traditional setup in Bhuj as compared to the cosmopolitan life in Karachi. And you also say that the locals were divided according to castes and subcastes, and that the siblings were always questioned about their religion and caste. And you feel very disappointed in the book, even writing about that. So, how might this heightened awareness of caste identity have affected the family's integration into a new community?
I think first my siblings were very disappointed
Hmm.
with the architecture of the Bhuj and how the narrow lanes and only one language was spoken, that was Gujarati or Kutchi, and
Kutch.
they were hearing other sounds in Karachi.
Hmm.
Then, even though we lived in a Gujarati setup, then I think this constant reference to Brahmins and the other upper classes. So they were not understanding it. And they asked my mother what happens in the lower caste, and they were also forbidden to kind of mix up with those other castes. And my sister, particularly, was very angry at the whole Bhangi culture, and how they came and cleaned the toilets because there were
Yeah.
no flushes at that time. And she said that whenever that Bhangi passed by, we were told to turn or shut our eyes and turn our face and move away from that direction. And she always questioned. She was a rebel, Sarla, and she
Yeah.
wanted to look at them and ask questions. So I don't think it affected their social perspective because they were still too young and they also didn't live for too long in Bhuj. Uh, and they also got very enchanted by Bombay when they arrived.
Yeah.
Uh, but the memory stays.
Yeah.
And whenever this problem comes up, they are always giving references of Bhuj.
Yeah.
But what Bhuj did to them was that it brought the culture of the whole Navratri because every street, every corner was doing Garba. In school,
Yeah.
their teachers were doing Garbas. So
Yeah.
I think they were absorbing, and perhaps they are also rich in their personalities because of the varied experiences.
Yeah. All right. And I would also like to know from you how your family rebuilt their lives after leaving Karachi. Were there moments or memories of Karachi that they clung to? Memories of food, the city, the neighborhood that helped them carry Karachi with them through that transformative period.
I think they all, my older six siblings and my parents, that is the eight of them, they held on to Karachi till their death time. It was always there. Karachi was always there, not just in my home, but when we went to our grandparents' home,
Yeah.
maternal grandparents, because my uncles, aunts, whenever the family met, Karachi was hiding in the corner somewhere, and
Yeah.
Karachi was mentioned. Uh, it always brought a smile to their faces. And whenever they met somebody, even they were not really immediately connected to who was from Karachi, they immediately struck a chord. And I
Yeah.
think somewhere all of them wanted to go back to it once.
Yeah.
But being coming from the generation they did, they never really tried. And I think I was the only one who seemed to have a potential possibility. But I think I was cursed in the sense that every time it seemed like I was going to go, it didn't happen. And I
Yeah.
was very sad because being a film journalist, I was never called to Karachi for a film festival. I was never called to Lahore for a literature festival, whereas so many of my contemporaries often went. And I
Yeah.
didn't know how to go. And then I said, maybe it is not meant to be. So it's all right. I don't want to try too hard. And then I could not start writing the book because I felt I had to visit. And then I delayed for a long time. And then I remembered Yash Chopra. He had become very old and he wanted to make a film on the partition Veer Zara. And he said कि एक बार कराची जाना चाहिए लाहौर जाना चाहिए एंड his son said कि पापा आज कहीं भी जाने की जरूरत नहीं है इंटरनेट से सब कुछ आप घर पे देख सकते हो so I said if Yash Chopra can see it I will do all my research on the net I remembered the names because my sister had given me the buildings, the places, the locations, and I will surf and I will search. And I'm not good at it, so I hired somebody who will search and surf and pass it on to me. And I told myself, just now give your best shot, and you can't delay it any longer. I'm going to be 70 this year, so I don't want to delay the process any longer.
All right. That's very interesting to know, actually. So, coming to you write in the book that, as we discussed earlier as well, that Bombay was the one place that could make your siblings forget Karachi. So, what aspects of Bombay, in terms of culture, social atmosphere, food, made it feel like a possible new home for them? Is there a particular anecdote from your siblings or your family that kind of captures this transformative experience in India, putting down roots in India?
There are no specific instances they have shared with me, but what they said was that it looked like a very interesting city, and they liked the energy, and they were very fascinated with the way people looked and moved, because in Karachi, I think probably people looked different. And the first memory that they have shared with me is when they hop out of the train at Kalyan, which is their first residence in Bombay.
Yes.
They said it was early morning almost, and there were hawkers on the street, starting their day's livelihood. And they had never seen something like that. But I think that maybe they had never gotten out of their homes in Karachi that early.
Yeah.
So they had never seen it, perhaps. The other thing they said was that the people were very friendly. And they just liked the people, the neighborhood. They made friends easily. The conversations they had in the school. And I think the climate was a challenge, the rainy season, which is there, a chapter in the book.
You described that.
My mother was very happy with the people around her. She made friends very easily. And I think in Mulund somewhere, she made friends with all the ladies, and then they used to go for the Janana shows to watch Raj Kapoor films. Of course, that 25 paise ticket was a challenge that she had to each time save from her kitchen expenses, because the children were free. So the children could sit down anywhere and they were not charged.
All right.
So you know how interesting it is when she talks about the Janana shows. And when Shekhar Gupta's Bandit Queen was released, and I was interviewing him.
Yeah.
And I remember when Bandit Queen, one of the arguments that was put forward was that people are not coming to the cinema halls because women are not feeling comfortable watching what happened to Fulan Devi with the men in the theatre. And therefore, ladies' shows were being held in cinema halls. And I told Shekhar that, my mother has gone to Janana shows and she talks about it. So imagine it took so many years for Janana shows to return.
And, this brings me to my penultimate question. And I would really like to know, you've written so extensively about cinema and culture, but with Farewell Karachi, you turn that lens inward. And, you're writing something deeply personal that is so rooted in family and that is so rooted in memory. So was this a very different, very difficult writing process for you? Because it's no small feat to distill over 100 years of family history across 5 generations into just 160 odd pages. So I would really like to know the process of it all, how you even began to collect and collate all this information and then write about it and put it so concisely in a 160 odd page book.
First, yes, my identity is of a film journalist, and my books are also primarily about movies or a movie analysis. But I have digressed in the sense I have written 2 books on Lord Krishna because I'm a Krishna devotee. I've done 2 books on the Prime Minister. He translated his poems from Gujarati into English. And I have done a book on Garbha Sanskar, which was also a kind of a translation for all the pregnant women who are not conceiving. Sorry, the homemakers who are not conceiving. This was the most difficult book. And I think even though I was writing in my head for a long time, I just could not muster the courage to get onto the computer. I felt I was ill-equipped to do it. And I felt at a loss of not having a roadmap. I felt very sad that when my parents were alive, I didn't sit down and take all the information. But it is very boring after a hard day's work, when you are all the time interviewing stars, to come home and take information from your parents just because you think that someday you're going to use it. And at that
Yeah.
time, I was too rosy eyed to think like that. And you don't treat your parents like that. And then suddenly they were no more. The older siblings, the older six siblings, the three were very young and they had very faint memories. So, really, my game was for the older three. And out of that, one was abroad, had passed away, and my sister, the oldest sister, was there. But I heard stories from her when I met her, but I was still not getting into the mood for the author. She later on got into dementia. But before she got into dementia, my brother wanted some chronological details of the family, of the ancestors, the names. So she penned that down in Gujarati and gave it to him and asked me if I wanted a copy. And that for me was the beginning, because just getting the lineage was a tough task, particularly my maternal side, because they have a peculiar history where they use the same initials alternately.
Yes, KHHK. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
KHHK, and my head was again and again whirring. I don't know how many times I must have called my cousin, who is
Yeah.
just a few years older than me, and he would
Yeah.
say, "Why aren't you getting it right? Why don't you write it down?" I said, "It's written, but I don't know what is happening. I'm stumbling."
Yeah.
Similarly with the pictures. And then my other sister, who was in Berlin, who I believe was a dormant writer. And I told her, because she had an arranged marriage in Germany, and she has witnessed the falling of the wall, the East and the West wall. I told her, you write a story from the Karachi and the India partition and end it on the East and the West Berlin Wall, and you are a woman and you are a first time author, and your voice will be celebrated. But she never did. So I told her that, all right, at least whenever you get the time, you write down the descriptions of the grandfather's mansion and our boat home. Because I knew the Mulun home, even I was 4 years old, and they used to put me on that swing facing the street. So there's some things still there in my head about the Mulun home. And then when she died, my sister died, my nephew was, my brother-in-law died, and my nephew in Berlin, Hamburg, was putting the whole thing together and, selling of the house and the belongings. And beneath my sister's bed mattress, he found exercise sheets where she's written the description of the Karachi home and the Bhuj home. And he came to India and he brought for me, and I said, now the universe is telling me to go ahead. And after that, when the book, again, I was struggling at some chapters, I went to my nephew's home. That is my mama's son, my uncle's son, my cousin's home. And he gave me a 1950 press cutting of my great grandfather when he left Kutch to go to Karachi, where the story began. And I said, my God, look at this. I cannot believe it. Because I didn't know my great grandfather's story. So I feel I am blessed. It's my parents and my grandparents are blessing me and giving me this. And I'm so glad I'm doing it now. I am still working. You don't know what happens tomorrow.
Yeah.
So for all the nephews and the grandnieces and the grandchildren, there is a legacy from me. So there is an interesting story. When my parents turned 100, they were no more. So I waited for both their 100 years to happen. It's a 2 year gap. And I celebrated their 100 years. And I was told that I'm the only one who has probably celebrated her parents 100 years after they are no more. And I called
Yeah.
100 guests.
Yeah.
And I had a musical journey of 100 years of cinema.
Yeah.
And I made a film of 5 minutes of their journey, a 5 minute film. And I think that film also was somewhere in my head, the beginning.
Wow, that's amazing. That's very interesting to know. And this brings me to my last question. And I really want to know from you, did writing this book feel like some kind of closure, or did it open up new questions for you about identity and belonging and what it means to be uprooted?
What an intelligent question. Wow. Really nice. I think both. I think both. So, closure to many things, my identity, my displacement, not direct, but my feeling of constant insecurity, of worry that if something happens, I don't have a roof above my head,
Hmm.
which though seems completely neurotic because I live in very comfortable surroundings and I have been secure all my life, apparently, economically, creatively,
Hmm.
professionally, but emotional insecurity. And also losing so many of my siblings so rapidly.
Hmm.
And coming to my own equations with them post my parents' demise. And the opening was an awareness, um, a sense of elevation that I am the forebearer of such a rich legacy. And I'm extremely proud of my roots. And I am proud of the culture, the traditions that were given to me, bestowed on me. And perhaps all that is still there in my personality, my persona, in my writing. Um, and I'm unashamed and unapologetic about it. For
Hmm.
example, when I became a new journalist, I remember my editor telling me, "You're too sensitive. I can hear your glass bangles."
Hmm.
And I could have taken that as a sexist remark and felt offended, but I chose to just put it aside and move
Hmm.
on and take a small leash on the sensitivity to not make it apparent. But
Hmm.
that was causing me a lot of effort, and it was making me uncomfortable. So as I went along, I just accepted the fact that I'm different.
Hmm.
And if I'm not fitting into the herd, it's all right.
Yeah.
And slowly, I think people accepted me the way I was. Um, Even today, when I meet extended relatives and they say that, wow, you are recognized in the film world, but you don't look like a film journalist.
Yeah.
I don't know. So I said, do you expect me to wear feathers and costumes like Helen and move around in real life just because I belong to cinema?
Yeah.
And my friend group, all of them are far more glamorous and than I am. But I'm comfortable like this. I don't want to be anyway. So I'm fine.
Yeah.
I felt it was a closure of the family, the journey, and also to who I am. And maybe now I can explore because nothing is constant. Your personality is changing according to your circumstances.
Hmm.
And maybe I thought I could never write a book like this
Yeah.
because somehow the mainstream media is a little superior when it comes to the film world. They want the film stars on their covers when they want to put up the sales, but they generally tend to believe that they are more evolved than a film scribe is. because we are writing about these neurotic stars.
Yeah.
Maybe they will look at me through a new prism now. Not that I'm looking for their validation. Uh, I know my worth, and my self esteem remains uninjured. So it's about them.
Thank you so much, ma'am. It means so much coming from you. Thank you so much.